Congresswoman, you have been one of the champions of trying to reduce spending in government, try to get this crazy budget down, get inflation down. Joe Biden just gave one of the great giveaways in American history before an election, $10,000 to $20,000 off from anyone who's got a student loan. Your thoughts on that student loan cancellation? Is it even legal? Is there any legal authority to even do this?
No, absolutely not. I do not believe there's legal authority to just cancel student loan debt. But, you know, it's not fair to the hardworking Americans that never took out a loan, hardworking Americans that don't have debt, that pay off their bills, the hardworking Americans that pay their taxes with no problem. Why do they have to pay for someone else's student loan debt? You see, when we become a country where there's no consequences and people aren't held responsible for the actions and the decisions they make, then we become a country of complete lawlessness. And that's what the Democrat Party wants. They want us to be a country of lawlessness. And that's why they're the defund the police party. That's why they're the party where you don't have to pay back loans. That's why they're the party that is just ripping our country apart. And Joe Biden is wrong. He can't break the law and just forgive everyone's student loan debt. It just doesn't work that way.
No student loan has been referred to collection since March of 2020. That comes to an end. On May 5th, the Department of Education will resume involuntary collections for borrowers with defaulted federal student loans. Debt cannot be wiped away. It just ends up getting transferred to others. So why should Americans who didn't go to college or went to college and responsibly paid back their loans pay for the student loans of other Americans?
I'm Antoine Michael, and this is The Breakdown. Matt Gaetz, $482,000. Marjorie Taylor Greene, $183,000. Greg Pence, $80,000. Vern Buchanan, $2.3 million. Kevin Hern, $1 million. Roger Williams, $1.4 million. Brett Guthrie, $4.4 million. Ralph Norman, $616,000. Mike Kelly, $987,000. Carol Miller, $3.1 million. Pete Stauber, $86,000. Andrew Clyde, $156,000. Pat Fallon, $493,000. These are all House Republicans whose PPP loans were forgiven during the course of the pandemic because their businesses were struggling to stay afloat. But if we're going to use the logic of Marjorie Taylor Greene, why should we, the American public, be responsible for their businesses? We didn't sign on the line for that. We didn't come up with the ideas for their businesses. We didn't incorporate those businesses. So why should we, the American public, be carrying this debt? Because according to their own words, debt just doesn't disappear. So who is covering their debt? We are. If we're also going to use Marjorie Taylor Greene's logic here, then I guess we have a concentrated group of Republicans who are actually Democrats, because apparently it is only Democrats who want their loans forgiven. And it is also important to pay attention to what the White House press secretary is saying here. And what we need to take away from what she is saying is that this administration is incentivizing an American public to remain ignorant. She is saying that, hey, if you went and you took out those student loans and you struggled during the pandemic and you are having a difficult time in paying back those student loans and you went into default, that we are not going to pick up your loans, but we will pick up the loans of this particular privileged class, but not you, even as you pay back the debt of others, that we will incentivize you not to know how this nation and its social institutions work, that they want to keep an American public ignorant. In other words, that the process of education in this nation is, in fact, a political act. That this administration wants to do all it can to make sure that the American public is limited at the K through 12 level. And then moreover, on top of that, they want to limit what you learn at the K through 12 level by placing your evaluation in your understanding on a test. That they want to prepare you for citizenship by limiting your knowledge of how this joint works. What we all need to understand as it relates to higher education, that before you step foot in the classroom, that the very construction of the university, the very construction of the college itself is inherently political, that taking up sociology, taking up history, taking up political science, taking up English, chemistry, biology, whatever have you, that process in and of itself is a political act. That in the moment that you dedicate yourself to fill out an application that says, yes, I want to know more about how this country operates, that It is a political act because this administration is committed to keeping you ignorant. And this is not anything new, right? Let's take a look at this particular newspaper that comes out of the 1970s. And this comes from a former advisor to President Nixon who came to work under then Governor Ronald Reagan. And he says, quote, America is in danger of producing an educated working class. That, quote, we are in danger of producing an educated proletariat. That's dynamite. We have to be selective on who we allow to go through higher education. In other words, they don't want you to know how systems, structures, and institutions operate. That in and of itself is a political act. Because if we can keep you ignorant, then we will keep you voting against your interests over and over and over and over and over again. That we can convince you that Elon Musk has your best interest at heart, that Jeff Bezos has your best interest at heart, that Michael Bloomberg has your best interest at heart, that if we can keep you out of education, if we can keep you from learning research methods and how to reach into public institutions and get the documents that you need, if we can keep you from learning that, if we can keep you from learning how to do an analysis on a document, then we can keep you voting against your interests and keep you thinking that it is the elite who has your best interest at heart. We can keep you thinking that trickle-down economics actually works. This is what this administration is on track to do. And what I'm trying to demonstrate here is the fact that this particular approach to an uneducated American public is not something new. Again, we just went through what happened here in the 1970s. And what's even more interesting here is that the Heritage Foundation comes up with the mandate for leadership in the late 1970s, 1980s, as Ronald Reagan is coming into prominence, and it comes through to the mandate for leadership with Project 2025. In other words, the leadership class of this nation is invested in keeping you ignorant of the issues, even as they take tax breaks. Let's look at some historical data that comes from the Americans for Tax Fairness here. They say in 2014 to 2018, Warren Buffett's true tax rate was 0.1%. Jeff Bezos from 2014 to 2018, despite having a wealth of $99 billion, his true tax rate was 0.98, and that he paid zero federal income taxes both in 2007 and 2011. Michael Bloomberg, true tax rate 1.3%, and he paid 1.3% despite his $22.5 billion in increased wealth between 2014 to 2018. Elon Musk, true tax rate 3.27%, and he paid zero in federal income taxes in 2018. Carl Icahn, who is a billionaire, paid zero federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017, despite a $544 million increase in reported income. George Soros paid zero federal income taxes 3 years in a row. Again, this is from the Americans for Tax Fairness. And these are the people who are convincing you that they have your best interest at heart, even as they take up governmental contracts. So please understand this. As people like Elon Musk, as people like Jeff Bezos are competing for governmental contracts, they are also at the same time leveraging their debt upon you, while at the same time taking advantage of the Trump tax cuts, as has been made clear here by the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, that is in fact the working in the middle classes who will take on more of a tax burden than those who make more money. This current administration is invested in keeping an ignorant American public who will get out there and who will say Trump, Trump, Trump. And even now they're beginning to roll out Trump 2028 in hopes that you will remain ignorant about how society operates. If you want to act against the administration, I don't care which side of the aisle that you are on, because we have a whole class of Republicans that are now getting the idea that, oh crap, we voted the wrong way. And since now that you know you voted the wrong way, your first act is to go back to school. I don't care if it is a private college. I don't care whether it is a public university. university. I don't care whether it is your local community college. Start where you are at, because this administration is vested in you remaining ignorant of the issues and how laws work, how social institutions work, how governmental bodies work. And that is designed on purpose. So therefore, what they did, because at one point in time, particularly in the state of California, college tuition was free, but now it has been racked up to the roof with debt and with costs just to get an education to understand how this nation works. So if you want to be aware of the issues, if you want to really know how things work, take yourself back to school. There's a reason why student debt exists. There's a reason why Jeff Bezos wanted the student debt portfolio. Be aware of how this works. Be aware of how this works. We cannot stay in this space forever. And whichever side of the aisle that you are on, please know that this administration is vested in you remaining ignorant. It is obvious from 1970s up until now. This is what came from the White House lectern. And these are the implications of what we need to understand about what is happening here. This is not about, oh, who should pay off student debt, who should not pay off student debt, even though that conversation is important. It is about this particular administration making sure that the larger American public, remains ignorant. Don't be ignorant. Get in the books. Be political, even if you have to start with one class at a time like I did. This is The Breakdown. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.